Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
Let's go right now down to Charleston, South Carolina. Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley. Let's take a listen.
I said the campaign was grounded in my love for our country. Just last week, my mother, a first-generation immigrant, got to vote for her daughter for president. Only in America. I am filled with the gratitude for the outpouring of support we've received from all across our great country. But the time has now come to suspend my campaign. I said I wanted Americans to have their voices heard. I have done that. I have no regrets. And although I will no longer be a candidate, I will not stop using my voice for the things I believe in. Our national debt will eventually crush our economy. A smaller federal government is not only necessary for our freedom, it is necessary for our survival. The road to socialism is the road to ruin for America. Our Congress is dysfunctional and only getting worse. It is filled with followers, not leaders. Term limits for Washington politicians are needed now more than ever. Our world is on fire because of America's retreat. Standing by our allies in Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan is a moral imperative. But it's also more than that. If we retreat further, there will be more war, not less. As important, while we stand strong for the cause of freedom, we must bind together as Americans. We must turn away from the darkness of hatred and division. I will continue to promote all those values, as is the right of every American. I sought the honor of being your president. But in our great country, being a private citizen is privilege enough in itself. And that's a privilege I very much look forward to enjoying. In all likelihood, Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee when our party convention meets in July. I congratulate him and wish him well. I wish anyone well who would be America's president. Our country is too precious to let our differences divide us. I have always been a conservative Republican and always supported the Republican nominee. But on this question, as she did on so many others, Margaret Thatcher provided some good advice when she said, quote, "Never just follow the crowd. Always make up your own mind." It is now up to Donald Trump to earn the votes of those in our party and beyond it who did not support him. And I hope he does that. At its best, politics is about bringing people into your cause, not turning them away. And our conservative cause badly needs more people. This is now his time for choosing. I end my campaign with the same words I began it, from the book of Joshua. I direct them to all Americans, but especially to so many of the women and girls out there who put their faith in our campaign. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for God will be with you wherever you go. In this campaign, I have seen our country's greatness. From the bottom of my heart, thank you, America. God bless you.
That was, I guess we call former Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley delivering remarks in Charleston, South Carolina, formally withdrawing from this presidential election.
And made it very clear that no one's to ask her who she's voting for.
Right.
Basically saying that that's a private citizen's right to vote for who she's voting for. And
what, no endorsement?
And clearly not endorsing President Trump. And I really wonder what that means. Is it a 2028 thing or is that a convention thing?
Yeah, I don't know. All I know is I think we're going to have to really pay attention to these conventions, particularly the Republican convention this summer. In the past, you can kind of blow by them and go to the baseball game on, but I think you might have to focus a little bit this time. Let's check in with Josh Wingrove. He's Bloomberg White House reporter. Josh, you heard former Governor Nikki Haley's comments here. Any takeaways for you today?
Yeah, I think that was a sort of a polite sounding of the alarm. Her comment on it being up to Trump to earn support inside and outside the party is essentially a nicer version of what she's been saying on the stump, that Trump is, in her view, as of now, headed for a loss. Of course, the polls show he's winning right now, but the big question throughout this primary is what happens to the 20, 30, 40% of state primary voters who've been voting for Haley. Do they vote for Donald Trump? Do they stay in the fold? Do they stay home? Do they back a third-party candidate? Some of them are saying they'll vote for Joe Biden. And so I think that she's sort of sounding the alarm a little bit. I wouldn't pay so much attention to the convention. Personally, I suppose it's a guess in any sense of the word here. I think Nikki Haley is staking out the "I told you so" ground, and that if and when, or if Donald Trump wins in the fall, then Haley's place in the party wasn't going to be all that high anyway. If he loses in the fall, then she's the one that can say that she was loudly warning of that, and that sort of gives her inside track for at least a certain segment of the party in 2028.
Okay, so Josh, that makes it seem like it is a 2028 sort of thing, because there was a narrative for a second about the convention and trying to get delegates, and she just like kind of show up and see what happens. You don't think that's a real thing?
I don't. Although I am curious whether she'll speak at the convention. I think a lot of us will be spending our times combing through the vagaries of the rules of the RNC to see whether precedent would either sort of suggest she gets a speaking spot or not. This is going to be a tricky one for her. She's been pretty vocal in sort of her views of where Trump is going, and so to the extent that if she's there and sort of in the fold and speaking to suburban communities, those sort of voters that Trump has been losing, then that's probably good for Donald Trump. But if she's there sort of reminding everyone that there's in her view, sort of a five-alarm fire going on, then that's bad for Donald Trump. If you look at where she has performed well in the primaries, it is the types of areas where Joe Biden wants to perform well in the general election. It is suburbs, it is cities, and so the Biden people have been, Nikki Haley fans, essentially, A, because she's out there prosecuting a case against Donald Trump rhetorically on the election circuit, but B, because they think that her very candidacy was sort of reminding voters that they might not be Donald Trump voters.
All right, Josh, thank you so much. We appreciate getting some thoughts there. Josh Wingrove, Bloomberg White House reporter. Again, Nikki Haley withdrawing from the race, as I think a lot of folks thought she would after Super Tuesday. Right.
But it does really open up that 2028, and sort of I'm really interested in what those voters do. And if you don't have her at the convention, what's in it for those voters at the convention? Like, who's talking for them? I don't know. I think it's I believe we were talking earlier with Tom Keene, but this is Donald Trump's Republican Party now in every shape. I joked to John Tucker that if my father were alive, he'd vote for Richard Nixon. I don't think my father would recognize his Republican Party, but it is in fact changed, and it is behind President Trump. So we'll see how that plays out. Again, I'm going to pay attention to when they have these meetings this summer, these conventions. Yeah.
This is the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast, available on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Listen live each weekday, 10 a.m. to noon Eastern, on Bloomberg.com, the iHeartRadio app, TuneIn, and the Bloomberg Business app. You can also watch us live every weekday on YouTube and always on the Bloomberg Terminal.